Welcome, everyone, to Marked Out Radio. This is actually part 2 of our interview with Ken Pulvidente from KNS Wrestlefest. Dana, what do you think people are going to say about this?
I think people are going to absolutely love this inside look from one of the titans of the industry. I mean, Sean and I, we on a weekly basis try to peel back the cover and show people an inside look. But Ken has had just decades of experience, and he has an insight that no one else has.
So with that, you said it better than I could. So with that, here's part 2 of the interview. And so you had mentioned before that you mentioned COVID a couple of times, and I think that pretty much your whole business model was sort of COVID had a big part in shifting that over. So what gave you the idea to start running virtual signings, and how has that kind of changed your business and changed your life?
Well, again, COVID it's a unique situation that happened then. There was a lot of people that suffered during COVID, and there were some people that benefited from it. I got a little bit of both. My wife, got sick from it, has long-term COVID effects, but at the same time, I got into a business that I was able to make more money than I ever made in my life. So it was a weird time. I would have to say I was in the mix of the first couple weeks of when all this was kind of forming. I remember I saw Rob Feinstein put a video showing stuff on a table on his Facebook. And I said, whoa, what the heck's that? And he's just scanning over a table with stuff. And I had a couple closets full of stuff. And I'm like, maybe I can do this. And I went live on Facebook, and I didn't have I had 4 or 5 people watching. People found out, they're looking, and I remember doing it, and I got like 5 people buying something, and it was like $400 in sales, and like I was on for like 30 minutes. And I'm like, well, there's something here. There's definitely something here. And Andrew Keller was doing it around the same time. I saw him start doing something, and I believe Nick Christie started doing it right around the same time, and Rob Feinstein, and I saw it right around the same time, and then I was going live. I think we were all maybe literally, I would say, days of doing something around each other. I think Marty from T-Mart maybe too. And I just said, let's do this. And I started to do it out of my bedroom for the first couple weeks. And I was like, I was selling like $1,000 worth of stuff in an hour and a half. I mean, it was just unbelievable. You're like, this is crazy. So, and you're getting good prices.
Well, and the prices went through the roof at the time. Yeah. Well,
even at that time, people were just buying it, even though it didn't hit its peak at that point. People, didn't have the viewership yet. And then I'm just like, okay, let's figure this out. I had all this stuff in the house, and my father owns the building I'm in, and it was empty. And I said, hey, I just need a place to set up just to show my stuff and, do it. And Steve said, oh yeah, I got some stuff too. I said, well, let's do it together. And we sat and we put the camera on, and we created a little bit of a show out of it. And we showed things for 2 hours, and Steve sold $1,000 worth of stuff, and I sold $2,000 worth of stuff because I had, more stuff than him. And we're like, this is crazy. And then I would invoice it and send it out. And I'm like, well, something is really, this is something. And we only did sales for like the first couple, I want to say the first maybe month and a half, 2 months. And then I said, there's something, what happens if we bring a virtual guest out? If we have a wrestler, can we sell the autographs? People are buying stuff. Like, it's the same thing. I'll just have a guy here sell his autographs. And I called Tony Atlas, and I said, Tony, do you want to come down and do it? And he said, sure. Shows were shut down then. He wasn't getting booked. Airplanes were barely taking off. So Tony drove down here, and in Steve's backyard at the time, we had Tony show items that we were selling, and we also sold photos. It was very, rudimentary. It was very unorganized. It was choppy. It wasn't great. I think I broke even on Tony, and Tony signed some stuff. But I said, there's something here. There's something here. And we went back to the building, and I brought in Tito Santana. And I made I fine-tuned it a little bit, and we made profit on just the signing. And then I brought him back again a month later, and I made another profit. And then I brought Brutus Beefcake and Bob Orton, and I'm like they all made money, And I'm just like, how is this happening? How is this? And then more people followed, and I was doing sales. Now, I don't want to toot my own horn. I'm not saying I was the first guy to run a virtual signing, because I don't think I was, but I was definitely the first guy to have an in-studio guest doing a virtual. So, and I now somebody would have done it after me if I wasn't around, but it's funny because virtuals is almost like a booking now with wrestlers. They go, oh yeah, well, some don't know what it is, but most of them now have oh yeah, I've done 6 of these, I've done 4 of these. It's almost like the shoot interview back in the day. Everybody was doing a shoot interview. Yeah. And that was a booking. You're going to do a signing and a shoot. Now it's you're going to do a signing and you're going to do a virtual. And it's become another booking for a guy. And the wrestlers know, oh yeah, I did a virtual. And I take some pride in the fact that I believe we were the first people to have a virtual guest, to actually introduce that. So I do, take pride in that. And it just, built on it. I said my game plan was to do virtuals on a regular basis. And like I said before, I worked very, very hard at it. And I wanted people to come in, and I wanted to be known as the place that ran regular weekly virtuals.
You kind of, because obviously the COVID is in the rearview mirror as far as the shows have been in full swing for years.
Yeah,
so what was born of necessity has now turned into more or less your whole model at this point.
Yes, and again, is it as strong as it was a year ago? No, it's not. But is it still doing okay? Yes. Am I having my issues? Yes. But do I feel that I became, due to me being so steady, I became the person that was most associated with it? Because I ran it every week. There were weeks we didn't have somebody, but then there were weeks we had 3 people. And we just were known as that. And I saw guys come out and run their virtuals, and then they would run one, and then they'd come back 6 months later, and then they would do one, and then you'd never see them again. And I was like, you have to be consistent. If you're not consistent, you're not going to gain traction. And if you're not going to gain traction, you're not going to be known as the person that does regular virtuals. And I felt that as long as they were making a profit, that there was no reason not to do this. And I always felt the stuff on the back end, which is important to me now, was stuff that I was going to stockpile, which, Dana, I have a stockpile here of stuff. It's all the stuff I came into the COVID with, that I was selling from my closet, 95% of that is gone. Everything that's in this building now was stockpiled from the last 4 years. So I said to myself, I want to stockpile stuff because it's, I'd say about 90% of the stuff in this building is all based on back items from stuff that I already made profit on the guy.
So it's gravy, basically.
It's all gravy. 90% of it is all gravy. So if I paid a guy his airfare, his hotel, and his fee, and that all cost me $1,500, and I made $2,400 on the virtual, and I made $900 profit, and then I put all his figure cost and his photo cost into that, and everything was covered, and now I have 4 figures left, 20 trading cards, a couple magazines, and 50 photos. It's all gravy. It's all been paid for with past the profit from what it was, and that's how I ran, and that's how I usually continue to run. And I figure that when the virtuals are to the point where I can't make real profit anymore, because it will end, everything ends, then I will take the stuff that I've stockpiled and I will do regular weekly or 2 times a week sales, just unloading my merchandise for the next 3 years, intermingling it with some new stuff that I invest in or are from dealings that I've had. So that's the model that I have, and when people, I've seen a lot of people try virtuals, and if you are not willing to be in it, if you're not willing to, and I don't know if you could start now. I don't think you can.
It's hard to get those eyeballs, right? I mean, you have a lot of eyeballs now.
And it was timing, it was hard work, and it was the eyeballs and the peak of the interest at that time. It was a perfect storm, and that's the only one of the reasons that I'm still standing.
And we can't forget. Sorry to cut you off, but we can't overlook the. I mean, you came up with which I'd love to hear a little more about how you came up with it. The KNS, the world famous book club. That has
original data. Original.
The original. But how did you come up with that? Because I feel like that's changed the game a little bit for you.
Well, by huge, and again, there are major cracks in it. But I still have members, many that still pay on a regular basis. But there are, how it came upon that idea. I was sitting here and I was doing the virtuals, and I said, how can I just make more money by getting people? I was doing the logo prints and stuff like that. ECW print. Let's get all the names on the ECW print. And I just felt like, you had 3, 4, 5, 6 people, but I just didn't feel like I was getting enough of that, And I just felt like it just wasn't as good as I thought it could be. And then I remember looking, and I looked at I had someone's WWE encyclopedia here that sent in, and I'm like, let me take a look. And I looked on Amazon, and I could buy these books at the time. I could buy 15 of them. They were like $25 each or whatever it was. I said to myself, if I'm going to do this, I got to be 100% behind it. I gotta promote it like it's something, and I gotta deliver with the virtuals, because I gotta fill their book, right?
What's funny is what you're doing is more or less the same that most major corporations have in some way developed a subscription model for their services, right? That's
Yes.
I mean, major corporations, whether it's the technology corporations where apps are now all subscription based, or television and streaming is all subscription based. This idea that people will keep coming back if you provide them with a service on a very consistent basis, where the demand is constant. And when Dana first told me about that you were doing the book club, I said, it's genius. There's no other word I would use for it, because you have this product with consistent demand, right? Just for people who don't understand, the WWE Encyclopedia is exactly what it sounds like. It's a book, a coffee table book of all the wrestlers. And the idea is that a lot of collectors, they want to get every wrestler to sign their entry.
Yep.
And so you basically have a subscription model where when you bring a guest in, they have an entry in the encyclopedia. Someone pays a regular fee, and then they get they leave their book at your house, basically.
And I made it feel like we're in a club. Like this is the KNS book club. Now, I might be overdoing it a little bit on how special that might be, but I felt like I wanted people to feel like they're really part of something. Everybody who comes to this door, they get a personalized text to them where I send them the offers for the week. And if it's this guy or that guy, whoever it may be, here's your offer. Thank you very much for being part of the club, the whole deal. You pick and choose who you want. They get it at a discounted price than it would be usually if they're getting an 8x10 or something like that. And I regularly, they get these messages. Now, some of these books I've had here if I've been doing the book club almost 2.5 years, maybe. I've had some of these books here for over 2 years. The customer's never seen it, and they've spent into 20,000 plus into these books of people that have just get me that guy next week, get me that guy next week, get me that guy next week. I mean, I might even be underdoing it on some of these books of what they've invested into it. I mean,
I mean, you built up a reputation, though, just to be clear, where you could be trusted to keep this product. I mean, it's very fascinating because someone is paying for something they can't experience. They can't even hold it.
No.
I mean, they could see it getting signed on the virtual, right?
Yes.
But
We call the
which is-
name out. Yep.
Yes, I mean there is that's a fun experience, right? So even if you're far away, you get to experience it. It's almost like going to a con. It's the same thing. Maybe they don't need it in person in their possession because the value of it is in that experience of having their name called out. It's their thing, and then that it's the kind of thing where I'm not innovative in that way at all. So I hear this and I go, but I want my stuff in my hands. That's what I want, Mm-hmm. But for me, that's not something that. But for someone who, and I couldn't give a hot damn about the experience. I don't even care about cons. I'll give someone many times if Dana was in a line, I'm like, take my stuff and just get it signed. I don't need to be there. It's fine. That's me. I'm different like that. It's just so interesting how there's definitely that sentiment among a certain cohort of the collecting community. And it's like, first of all, what an incredible service to provide for them, because they wouldn't be, you can look at it as a fan service because quite frankly, you're giving them opportunities to get people who they otherwise would never have access to.
Yes, and I want to say this also with this latest encyclopedia that they put out. This encyclopedia at the time when I started this was only out maybe about a year and a half. So it was fresh on the market for the most part. Not only that, this encyclopedia has territory entries, sections. They have these sections in here. So I'm getting, like, I can bring in guys that never even competed in WWE, and they're signing the sections I offer. And so that's been huge for it as well. I mean, people are getting sections. They don't even have an entry. And, they just were a big star in world class, but they never made it to WWE or never went there. So the only thing with the book, what's happening now, and I've had a lot of members, and members are allowed to leave, and many have. They're in for X amount. They got their autographs, and they're like, hey, I want to opt out. Okay, no problem. Pay the shipping in the book. We'll send it back to you. We usually ask that you have to get at least 20 autographs in the book of your choice before you have the ability to ask to get out of it. So there's that. And then what I also do is I also what's harder right now to do is the book is now almost I can't get it anymore. It's not on Amazon anymore. I can't find new books. So that's
it's out of print.
It's out of print. So I can't even now. This book's like 4 to 5 years old now, so I can't get new books. So I'm relying on whoever is here. I'm always looking to see if I can get a book here or there. But to be honest with you, I'm not really getting many new customers that want it anyway. So I'm in a position now that I'm not bragging when I say this, but the book was and still was so vital to what I was doing here that it allowed me to put money and savings in my bank account that I never had before. So the idea was phenomenal for me. It still pays dividends because it still pays off the bills. It does have its cracks. And I'm hoping and praying, and maybe you guys know anything about this, is there going to be, I guess it would be what, a 5th or a 6th edition that's coming out?
I don't even know. It's funny because I still have the 1st edition encyclopedia somewhere, and I know they made some pretty significant improvements over the years. And I don't know. The thing is with WWE, their whole business is shifting and changing so much. I have no idea, what they're because I think the encyclopedia was part of that opening up of the history. They are much more focused on the history. They used to ignore history, right? And now they've been embracing history. But now the new sort of corporate direction, are they going to do another book? I don't even know. I
haven't heard anything.
I think the book has always been good for them, though.
Oh, the book was great. I'm not a big book collector of coffee table books, but it's a great book. It was brilliant for autograph hunting. I remember how many times when you go to the cons and you see people would be walking around with the books and just getting the books done. And and some of the workers were very slick. They had a couple different gimmicks in the book, and they'd get a couple sales, and not just one sale. They get a couple sales out of it.
Sure.
And it was a really great way for the fans to appreciate the history, but also to generate interest and find new things for people to sign. Because after the classic superstars died, and then after the figures, and then it was the encyclopedia, and then people are always looking for projects That was
Yes.
always that was the lingo on Marked Out. You know, what are your current projects? And the book was always a project that a lot of people had, and some people sunk 5 figures into the book. So.
Yes, and I do believe that there's going to be. I hope that there's going to be another edition, because I don't know why they would stop. I think they come out with one every 4 or 5 years, and I do believe that there's going to be a new one, hopefully, and I think that might breathe some new life into it. If I can reintroduce it with a new book, I think I'll be able to get some new customers to start if I have the book at a low price that I can start them at.
Yeah,
that is something that I'm hoping and praying does come out, and I think I could get some customers due to it.
sure.
Because the current plan, and I'm in no like delusional basis on this. This is all going to end, and the book club will end, and this building will not be doing what I'm doing anymore at some point, and we'll all be doing different things, and we're going to be saying, "Oh, wasn't that fun? The 4 or 5 years ago we were doing this." It's got to end. Everything comes to an end. And
also, you think about this. You have, I mean, I don't think I'm maybe I don't know if you ever sat back and thought about this, but I think, and we've talked about this and thought about it. You've probably booked more wrestlers than anyone. I really think that. I think
honestly, I would have to say I'm up there without a doubt.
And I mean, at one point I would say maybe the Legends guys or whatever, but when they slow down and you, if anything, accelerated, and so the truth of it is there's only a finite amount of wrestlers, right? And there's only and especially with the way the pay structure is these days, there's only a finite number of wrestlers who really need the money to take these kinds of bookings. Or need the money to take these kind of bookings in a way that makes sense for you to do them.
Yeah.
And so, you mentioned a couple names, like a guy like Tito Santana, you can book him 5, 6, 7, 8 times. There's a finite number of times you can book him in a given period of time before there's no dividend to be paid anymore.
Sure. And that will come. And I had that thought with Tito the third time I booked him. I said, well, I guess I'll never see Tito again. And then I booked him like 3 times after that. In the next 3 years, but there are certain guys that'll never work with. Like I had Bret Hart here, and I don't know if you guys have any idea what Bret Hart's asking price is.
I think it's like 40 grand, 35 grand, right?
Okay, not when I had him here.
I mean, that was his asking price a couple weeks ago because he walked out of the building when he wasn't paid it. So
I paid $25,000 for him to be here.
Yeah.
And I made a small profit on top of that and got a lot of stuff signed. So how in the world could I ever bring him back here when I had him already once, fresh, new in the building? How could I make money back on that again? He already hit a good portion of the book club, so that's going to be down. And is there really, I hit some of my customers, even though they change my customers. But how am I going to really?
Yeah, it's kind of like we were talking about, because Dana and I know we've been talking to different people about the possibility of trying to put something together for Hulk, right? And it's like, what the heck would the circumstances have to be to make it worth it? Given that you'd have to lay out 6 figures almost, more or less. Depending on the circumstance, depending on what the numbers are, but what is the so completely with a guy like Bret, or I imagine even guys like Nash,
Diamond Dallas Page,
Page is another one who's where guys where they I guess Page especially doesn't need the money anymore, right?
No, and he's not going to sell like he thinks he's going to sell, and for his price tag. And he's in a little bit delusional about where he's at and as far as what he can sell. There's a lot of guys like that. Now, real quick, these wrestlers, you got to understand also too, like what's changing, right? So what's changing with a lot of these guys like Bret Hart, right? Or Diamond Dallas Page or these guys, for the most part, all of us in life, we usually get more wealthy as we age. Right.
That's the goal. That's the goal. That's the dream, right, Ken? that's what we're going for.
Yes. Whether it's through inheritance, whether it's through hard work, whether it's through both, whether it's through, whatever it is. Now, you have a guy like Bret Hart, who's in his mid-60s. He's collecting Social Security now, I suppose. He's amassed a great amount of money from doing things. And if he's frugal with it, and then you also say to yourself, okay, well, what's the guy's personality? The guy's 65, 66, whatever he may be. He's got money. He's collecting Social Security. I feel a lot older and frailer than I did 20 years ago. So I can imagine what I'm going to feel like at 65. Do I want to go and get on a plane and put up with the bullshit to see these people, to do this when I really don't need the money? Because realization comes in, you say, well, how many more years do I really have left on the planet? And do I want to spend those years going to see Dana or Ken, and try to make them money or not make them money?
Right. And I mean, some of them are definitely addicted to the fans, slobbering all over them and how much they love them. There is that component of it too. But I imagine for some of these guys, especially like a Brett, who probably doesn't care that much, he's a pretty low key guy, or Nash, who certainly doesn't care. But some of these guys definitely have their, they do it sometimes to get the little ego bump.
Yeah,
well.
and yes, they do. They do want that. There are some guys that actually want to get out of the house. Then there are some guys that could care less, and it's across the board. But if you take out the people that just are getting older and say, you know what, I'm tired of this. I want to just sit in my pool. I got maybe 10 years left on this planet. I'm going to just sit in my pool. And I'm just not. So you're dealing with the change of the guard and the people getting older. Then you look at some of these AEW people, and you try to say to yourself, well, how in the hell does a mid-carder in AEW who couldn't get noticed in public in any shape, way, or form most of the time be asking for this type of price when their television viewership is getting half the viewership that TNA wrestling got back in 2007 and 8.
Oh, because their salaries are high. They don't have to do it.
Because they're getting paid. They're getting paid by a person that's overpaying them. I mean, how do you pay certain guys $150,000, $200,000, $300,000 a year?
Well, not to go too in the weeds, but he's looking for that $500 million licensing deal through Warner Brothers, right? So that's the end game here. And that's that. I think that problem is the wrestling business. These guys don't have to sell tickets. I think we're gonna in our lifetime we're gonna see a world in wrestling where they're not selling. The ticket sales are totally irrelevant. Where they're making everything from licensing and from streaming and from all this kind of crap. So that's my opinion. I think we're gonna see we're in that already. I mean, the ticket sales. The house, even WWE cut down the house shows because they don't need to run them. They don't care. They don't, for a $200,000 house show, which means nothing. It's a rounding error on their monthly budget. This doesn't make sense.
Now, can I ask you guys a quick question?
Yeah. Please,
because this is what I'd be very interested in knowing. Is you guys are late to the party,
very late,
and you're late to the party, and you've decided to do something that I've done or other guys have done. You're trying to book wrestlers at conventions. You're selling the stuff. You're making deals with guys. What are your challenges that maybe I'm not seeing it because I'm years ahead of this? Like, what are the challenges that you feel you guys are running into?
So because Dana and I started on completely different paths here, and we only merged. I don't even know why exactly how we merged. So Dana's answer to this is definitely going to be different from mine. So you go first, and then I'm gonna go with my thing.
All right. I think it's just the reality of just coming in, like you said, coming in late. When you start booking talent for conventions, like when you start like talking numbers with the talent, the expectation, what you expect to pay them, it's difficult to make money. It is extremely difficult to make money. I know like Eric Sims and other vendors, they will do 4 or 5 shots in a weekend, and that makes the entire pill a little easier to swallow. So sometimes it's tricky with like what we are willing to do as far as scheduling. Like I don't necessarily want to take a road trip with a Tito Santana, no offense to Tito Santana, to go to Albany, to go here, to go there, spend like literally an entire weekend doing
Sure.
this. So there's a lot of deals that it's just you're going to lose money. And I think some vendors are actually comfortable. I think, some people spend money golfing. For some of these vendors, they're comfortable losing money to spend the time at a convention with whoever they want to spend the time with. They don't really care what they make. We try to get into this to make money. So I think it's all about just being very selective and being able to turn down deals that you just know you're not going to really do well with. So that would be like, I think, my personal challenge.
Yeah. So I'm gonna be a little bit more inside baseball, probably a little bit more honest than I expected to be, but okay. So I was looking at how much money I was spending every year on this hobby, on my collecting and going to cons and stuff like that, and it's a lot of money. And it comes across, and when you really analyze it, it comes almost like it's a frivolous expense, you know. Sure. And so doing this as a business allows you to, let's just say it, have certain tax advantages for things that could be perceived as hobby expenses or would have been hobby expenses if you didn't have a business, are all of a sudden business expenses. Yeah, you know, and so if you can have a little fun and make a little money along the way, you know, my first, and I was not doing, when Dana during COVID was doing all kinds of shenanigans and, you know, doing bulks and during COVID, I was like not interested in the hobby at all. I stopped even looking at eBay and stopped buying stuff, and I was just not in the headspace. I don't know why I was not in the headspace to think about it. And what really drew me into this as a business was ironically nothing to do with wrestling at all. It was the opportunity to work with those guests for Chiller Theater in October a couple of years ago, the Romeo and Juliet actors, Olivia Hussey and Leonard Whiting. And it was a weird, like, serendipitous thing. You know, I'm an English teacher. That's my day job. And that movie, Romeo and Juliet from 1968, is one that I show in my 9th grade class every year. And all of a sudden I have the opportunity, just by dumb luck, to try and set something up with the actors from this movie who haven't done anything ever. And then so it's like, you know, it's a weird thing. Like, you know what? I look at certain moments in my life as almost like being fate. And this is going to sound absurd, but that's really kind of what happened. And so I'm like, all right, let's try and a lot of it is, how hard could this be? And this is not trying to be dismissive of the people who've been extremely successful in this business, but let's face it, the majority of the vendors and promoters are not extremely successful. They're moderate failures, right? So knowing that and seeing that, and like if these, for lack of a better word, if these nudniks can do it, then I can give it a run. I'm a pretty smart guy. I can avoid some of the natural pitfalls and you know, so that first signing, which was like, I don't want to get into the whole details. We're going to do a whole episode about that signing, but my very first signing ever was a 5-figure deal, which is crazy. You know, it's completely insane thing. And I mean, I lost 20 pounds that week in sweat, you know, stressing out over it. At the end of the day, you know, we learned a lot from it, and I didn't pay for my education quite like you did, but we ended up doing all right with it. I think, okay, so now I see how this works, and now I see how I can take some of these opportunities and not. I don't want to pay. The part of it, I also don't want to pay retail anymore for some of these guys. You know,
for sure, yeah.
Paying retail is brutal. Being able to work with people and being able to understand how the system works and get what I want for my collection and have a little fun with it and maybe make a little money too. And like, honestly, I know this is not true necessarily of Dana, but I'm much more interested in the podcast than I am in the retail aspect of it. And I kind of looked at the retail aspect of it as a chance to launch something like this, because I think that this is filling a weird. I'm shocked that no one has done a hobby podcast before, because I mean, as I said, but there's some characters in this hobby, you know, and some real interesting people from all sides, and like there's a lot of I've seen crazy things happen at some of these cons. I mean, I would love to, you know, talk to Eric Sims about getting slapped by Luna Vachon during Legends of the Ring, or talk to, you know, someone who was involved, even not necessarily wrestling, but in some of the cons where like the whole scandal where Wizard World was booking guests or advertising guests who weren't actually booked and selling tickets, and then quietly canceling them, and all these things are interesting to me, and I've seen them over the years, and like, you know, so are we biting off a lot here? Are we? Yeah, I mean, look, we quickly realized, not to go too far in the weeds, because this is, you know, more about you, but we quickly realized that, like what you said before, as a vendor, bringing guests into shows is probably most of the time not the way to go, because what the guys want, in addition to what you got to pay for the overhead, you're not going to make it back. But, we quickly realized that, like, vending at shows, we did all right because we were never super ambitious. We never spent a lot. I refused to spend a lot of money on a guest, knowing that it's going to be, because these draws, even the cons that, big event draws all right, but there's just not enough bodies in the building to make the kind of money off of unless you're extremely lucky. It's going to make it really worthwhile. So, we've now kind of settled into doing a lot of private signings, because it's weird because that would never been my thought a year and a half ago, 2 years ago when we started. But the private signings are an easier way in to where we kind of get what we want. We can,
and to be honest, it's all about really just, in any shape, way, form, paying your dues. It's for lack of a better term. I mean, you have to get in on the the small signings. You can get in with different vendors that are bringing people in, and making relationships with the different people, and then you kind of just graduate to the next thing and the next thing, and you have more customers next week than you will have this week, and you hope, and you just move in that direction,
right?
There's so much, and hopefully you guys have me back at some point, because there's so much stuff that I would love to talk about when it comes to which I don't know how many people saw this back in the the early 2000s, the vendor wars between people booking people and getting pissed off because you have them a week before or 2 weeks before. And I mean, this, to me, I don't have a problem naming people.
It's still going on, Ken. Look at there's a reason why Paul Heyman was announced for Fanatics this weekend and then pulled from that show, right? Because so that was this week. That's this weekend coming up. It's funny though. I would love to hear stories about that, because I know it was brutal and cutthroat, and then people said a lot of nasty things to each other.
No, and the players back in the day were Sinomania. It was me. It was Legends of the Ring. I mean, the stories I could tell you. The text messages I got from people, from different people that were, loving me one week, and the next week they wanted me dead because, I'm, I've got the Mountie, 2 weeks before at some place in a different state. I still get it. You're right. I still get it to this day.
It's so funny if you think about it, if you really zoom out, like with the benefit of hindsight, with the benefit of time passing, just really think about the fact that people were bugging out about booking the Mountie in a different state. Like it's almost laughable, right?
Yeah, it sounds insane.
Yeah, and it happened all the time, and there's so much more from that too. Like, there's so many vendors that I've seen come and go that you just know that they're doing this because they just want to hang out with the wrestler, and they have no business sense whatsoever. And then, like, I like Eric Sims. Eric Sims is a good guy, but he'd be a great guy to have on. But
I would love to. He's hilarious. He's a character, right? So
he's a character. Hilarious. And I've said this many times, Derek. And this is not something I'm trying to belittle him on. But I tell him all the time. I said, Eric, you have to evolve. I said, you have not evolved your business, and he's had his issues over the years because he does not evolve. There are guys out there, like Eric Sims will do his virtual sales, and I'll watch him occasionally because everybody gets a kick out of Eric. And then, he'll message me and say, maybe I'll get some stuff from you. I said, okay. I said, Eric, but here's the thing. You're not doing anybody any favors, including yourself, by positioning yourself. And I've been guilty at times of this, but I try to hold some sort of line. I said, but you hold very little line. You are known as the 99-cent virtual guy, like the version of a 99-cent store. You can't sell anything over $20-$30 because you've let everybody know that you're selling everything cheap. And that's another thing I feel like that people need to, and we could talk about this down the line, is that there is a need to protect the value, whatever little value that is, of whatever item you are. Yeah. And I have seen people on virtuals. So I'll give you these 3 photos for $5. 3 photos for $5. I felt like saying, just give it away. Don't even charge. Just give it to them.
Like we did a bulk, so we had someone do a bulk for our. I don't want to say the guest, but we had someone do a bulk of like 20 or 30 pieces on one of our guests. and I know what they paid us per piece, right?
Yeah.
And then a couple weeks later, we saw them selling those pieces on Facebook for below what they paid us for them.
Happens all the time. I
was like banging my head against the wall. I was like, I put them in the shredder before you do that. What's the matter with you?
Yeah.
You know?
Yes. And it happens all the time. And because it costs very little to get 10 people, 20 people to watch your feed, you're just selling stuff thinking, okay, I can do this. But you need to, there has to be more protection of what we're selling. And it's very hard to do that because you've got a lot of people that are not protecting that. And you have people, and you're getting, okay, the newest person comes out, right? So you can get a little bit of money off that, that they'll hold their value. But, what do you think is going to happen to Paul Heyman?
Oh my God! That's why I want to touch it. Absolutely, I want to touch it. So it's funny. It's funny to say that because and again, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, but there was a recent WWE release, right? Who I just looking at what the appearance fee that I know people were paying because they have a big mouth and say what they were paying, and I'm like, I ain't paying that because we're not going to make half. We wouldn't make half that back on an appearance fee. It'd be brutal. And then those same people who paid those outrageous fees are trying to sell 8x10s to Dana. So buy them in bulk for me for $5 each or $4 each. It's like, no. First of all, what are you doing? You paid the guy $4 or $5,000. You're selling his 8x10s for $4. What the hell is wrong with you?
That makes sense.
Yeah, but you know what? That's a weird thing too because I can run a virtual, and I could charge $30 to a fan and have them scribe something and have it mailed to them and the whole deal. And then the value on that guy after he walks out of my building is
it cuts by 2/3, right?
I can't sell his photo. I can have trouble selling his photo for $10 if he's not in front of the camera.
Yeah.
So that's why I do very few sales because I don't want people to see me selling Jimmy Valiant for $25, inscribed how you want. And then I'm selling his extra photos for $10 2 weeks later. Right. That's not protecting the talent or me, and not protecting me working with them again.
All that makes sense. The problem is the people who are doing that have no idea what they're doing. They're blowing cash is what's happening basically.
Yeah, well, and they're not in it for the long term, and they're not in it for the business aspect of it. They're in it to just do. To make some quick money, get in, get out, do whatever, and unfortunately, it's all over the place. It's all over the place. I firmly believe that more wrestlers have signed more pieces of paper in the last 4 years than they signed in the previous 25 years.
Probably,
sure.
And that's and it's gotten very, very. It's gotten that's why I'm in no delusionment that I know exactly where my path is. If the WWE Encyclopedia does not come out again, a new one, then if I can't make money on virtuals to the point that I used to, then I had a great run, and I'm going to turn around and sell the stock I have for the next couple of years. And if I can pull a couple $1,000s in sales a week, that'd be great. And then I'll make some side deals and I'll walk off into the sunset.
And I don't know how much you're willing to name names or whatever, but I think this is interesting for me, a question like, which guest would you say was your all-time biggest success as a booking? And if you're willing to answer your biggest flop as well.
Okay. In both virtual and
sure, anything. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'd have to say one of my biggest successes, and I don't really care about saying this because, I don't think it's going to bother anybody. One of my biggest successes is one that just happened. I just had Sid Vicious in through Dylan Hines. And we all know Dylan Hines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay. So Dylan's Dylan. Dylan messaged me, started booking all these people at Jack's store, Wrestling Universe in Queens. And he told me that I have Sid Vicious coming in. I said, oh, Dylan, you think he's going to show up? I said, I've booked him 4 times. He's no-showed twice. He goes, well, Doug Gilbert's come with him. I said, okay, well, that's cool. He goes, well, do you want him for a virtual? I said, sure, but I'm not paying anything up front. I'm not paying you up front. I'm not paying for a flight or hotel. I'm not paying for anything. Just tell me the price that you want. He told me the price, which I have no problem saying, which was $2,500, because I don't consider Sid a real I don't consider Sid a real professional person, so I'm not going to give him that kind of respect on the other end.
And honestly, knowing what I know about prices, you must have jumped when you heard 2,500 because that's on the low end.
25 is what I paid.
Number.
25 is what I paid Sid for a big event convention 7 years ago.
Right. It's a bit for today. It's a big number. That's a very good number. A low number.
That's old school price.
So I said, okay, 25, and I said, Dylan, that's it. And he goes, yeah, that's it, 25. I said, okay. I said, I'll do them. You bring him here, I'll give you 2,500. Sure. Okay. I'm on pins and needles. I said to everybody, I said, okay, I'm going to invest in very little merchandise. I had 6 figures in the back that I just happened to have when one of the companies had their big sales. And I said, I'm going to make minimal photos. I'm going to invest in no more than $150 worth of merchandise. I made photos. I bought some cards. That's it. Figures. I told people, when I announced it, I said, mail order on your own risk. If you want to send it in, you're more than welcome. But if you no-shows, I'm not responsible to pay the return shipping. So it's up to you if you want to send it or not. I was going to do the book club, my mail order, photos, cards, some figures. That's it. Project, whatever they sent. Dylan, original plan was to have him be here Saturday morning, then leave here and go do Jack's store. And I said to Dylan, you do not want to do that. I said, you do not want to have him here in the morning and then go to Jack's store. I said, it's too much for the one day. I said, when's he coming in? He's coming in Friday. I said, okay, what time he's landing? 5:30. I said, okay, I can do it anytime. Go have dinner and come here and be here at 9 o'clock. We'll do it. All right, I think we can do that. I said, okay, well, long story short, Joe Fuji picks him up. Joe Fuji gets him. Dylan comes here with him, with Sid and Doug. They come here. There's some sort of disagreement between Dylan and Sid. There's some sort of argument. I'm like, oh, my God, I got all this here. I just worked on all this. I got all these photos lined out. I did the math in my head, what I was going to make if this thing happened. And I said, this is the problem. Dylan is pissed. Sid's pissed off because he's got a hotel he doesn't like. He wants to know why he's leaving Sunday morning, not Saturday night. And I'm thinking, let's just get this thing started. So Sid starts talking about that he's doing boxing. He's boxing and stuff like that. Like he boxes and he's just as exercise, or he's big into boxing. So I said, Sid, I did some virtuals with boxers. I said, I did one with Larry Holmes just recently. He goes, oh, really? So I grabbed the glove and I said, this glove's for you, Sid. I said, it's signed by Larry Holmes. He goes, oh, man, that's great. I really appreciate that. I appreciate it.
You made a best friend then?
I wouldn't say best friend, but I used that as a tactic I said, Sid, are we good to start? And he goes, yeah, let's start. So we started, and the whole time, Dylan is breathing over my shoulder. He's arguing with Doug Gilbert on the other side. I said, okay, let's keep moving. I had everything streamlined like you wouldn't believe. I had everything in color coordination. I never do that. Pictures, I wanted to see it in and out as fast as his hands could write. I said, no inscriptions. We can't do that. People wanted master and rule of the world. Are you kidding me? So we ended up getting it done. I had Dylan hits me up for an extra $100 because he's like, well, can you pay towards the hotel? I said, Dylan, no problem. Here's another $100. So I paid $26. Sid on the virtual with everything brought in close to $12,000.
Oh my God.
That's
a margin, man. That's forget about it.
It was like a $9,000 profit after merchandise and everything. And I'm like, holy shit, this is great. And as soon as Joe took them out, they left. I got some extra pieces signed, not a lot, but some stuff. They left. Joe texts me no more than 5 minutes after they leave. He goes, oh, this got awkward quick. I go, what the hell are you talking about? He goes, I'll call you after. Calls me after, and basically says, as soon as we turned the corner, Sid was lighting up Dylan Hines, just yelling at him and stuff like that about the hotel. I said, oh my God, did we dodge a bullet here? I said, because if he came on Saturday morning, Dylan would have pissed him off on Friday night, and he would have never been here on Saturday morning. And he almost didn't go to Jack's that day. Doug Gilbert left and flew home early and said, F it, I'm just going home. It was a monumental disaster that could have been and ended up being one of my biggest profits on the virtual.
That's fantastic.
That really is.
I had very similar thing the first time I had Foley. I hit similar numbers. Sid is not up on what his worth is because he no-shows and doesn't keep an eye to the business. So he could have easily gotten, in today's world, he could probably ask $5,000 from the promoter.
The question is, who's going to pony up, knowing that he just won't get on the plane? You know.
Well, it doesn't ask for a deposit, so you're never out that. You're just always out the flight and the hotel. So I've never seen him ask for a deposit from me or anybody else. So, but you're right, he might not show up, but he is definitely underpriced for what today's market would normally have him at. My worst guest that I had, you know, it is good. It really wasn't a worst guest. I'll give you real quick two. One was someone that you probably never heard of, and one was Shelly Martinez, and I have no idea why. We had her at a Icons show in Philly, and for whatever reason, I don't think we did $400 on her, and after everything, it was like a $1,200 deal. Not that it was a huge loss, but it was just, you know,
this demoralizing to sit there with empty tables. So
yeah, other than the first show where like overall I lost more money, if you're taking it from a individual stance, that was bad. The other worst one, which was really bad because it was so embarrassing, I contacted this women's wrestler named oh my god, I can't even remember the name now. Oh my god, I can't. The name is not coming up to me right now. But she was like a women's wrestler in the 80s. Despina Montegas. She was a women's wrestler in the 80s. She, you know, back then, you know, she was in the era of Judy Martin, Lonnie Kai, you know.
Sure.
But she never, you know, she worked Madison Square Garden in the mid 80s. She had a tag match, her and, you know, one of those girls against two other girls, and she went around the horn like they did back in the day. They were never focused on. She worked the territories here and there. She went around. She was local to New Jersey. So I got her, and I said to her, do you want to do a 50-50 split at, I think it was another Icon show?
Sure. Just to explain to people, a 50-50 split is when a talent doesn't ask for any cash up front. You split the vendor pays the fees associated with the table, and then you split the take 50-50 at the end of the night.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
Yeah. So she comes to the building, and she talked to me beforehand, and I had like bigger fish to fry that day too. I think I had Harley Race and Medusa. So I just put her on there. Someone was I said, just get whatever you get, Despina, and let me know. She had some photos that she made up. I said, okay. She made this chart about her career that she put on school oak tag paper, and
Jesus.
I had a back thing about it, like a stand to it, and put it by her. And I was so busy I didn't realize, and I saw her afterwards, and I said, okay, well, how'd you do? And she looked so defeated and demoralized. She said, I didn't sell one autograph. I said, oh my God, are you serious? And she's like, no, nobody knew who I was. And I'm just like, can I buy you lunch? You know, like what can I do here?
Oh my God.
She just, nobody knew who she was, you know? I mean, she spent the night before, you know, making a whole school project about herself.
Oh God.
So
that goes back to how you start, you know, how we started the episode, that you said like that you being this like historian that not every fan is, and apparently you knew who she was, and her school
and I knew she was limited.
Enough.
I knew she was limited. I knew she wasn't going to really sell.
You figure she'll do $200-300, right? She'll walk home with something, you know.
I think
it doesn't.
I think there'd be a couple people in that building like me that saw her, you know, work some match on YouTube years later, or remember her name in a magazine, because I remember seeing her name, you know, in a magazine popped up, her wrestling. I think it was Medusa on an AWA show. You know, people would see it and say, "Oh, I've never met her. Let me," you know, probably if Class 316 there, he probably would have been the only customer because he had to get everybody.
Oh yeah, Class would have gotten her.
Jerry would have got her.
But that was one of those things where it was, you know, it wasn't like a big money loss because I didn't have any invested, but it was just, I just felt so bad for her. I haven't taken a lot of huge money losses on really anybody, Virtual wise here, it's been, knock on wood, I've made money just about on almost every virtual guest except Ernest Miller. And that story could be for another one
right.
down the line. I mean, there's a lot of stories. I think the most interesting thing to talk about is, like I said, is the vendor wars that were prevalent that you guys didn't even know about in the.
We'd love to have that conversation.
Oh, that
so
would
Ken,
be amazing. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. This was a true education and a great time. Yes. We loved your shows back in the day. It's one of those things that at that time when you were putting on those shows, and we would, it was always something to look forward to, and you gave people a lot of value, and we were able to see, a lot of these stars who are no longer with us, and you gave us that opportunity. So that was, I know there are a lot of people who are appreciative of that. And this was a great conversation. So thank you so much for being on.
Yes, thank you, Ken.
I appreciate it, but and that's, and just to let everybody know, we didn't stop at 2005 with that one convention. Like you said, we ran shows in New Jersey in 2009, 10, and we had a bunch of shows there and in Philly as well. So we did make a comeback of sorts and stuff like that. So, and that's something we could always talk about down the line as well.
Absolutely. So thank you so much. And we'll talk to you real soon.
All right, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ken.
Bye.
All right. So that wraps up our interview with Ken Pulvidente. So any surprising information coming your way?
I think it was great just how open he was with both successes and failures, and as we said on the during the interview, like there's always like that little running joke where if a vendor says they break even, they lost $1,000. It was just refreshing to see someone that's kind of, laying all the cards on the table. This is where I won. This is where I lost. This is where I stand on issues that are maybe a bit controversial. It was just refreshing to see someone so open.
Yeah, it was really interesting to hear about the risks he took and how the early cons, he just kind of dived in head first. And he was emulating guys like Tommy Fierro or the Legends of the Ring guys or Mambo, but to see that he was able to put those pieces together with really no experience and just a little bit of kind of aggressive business acumen is pretty impressive.
Yeah, it really shows just like how the vendors and the businessmen that are going to actually stand the test of time separate themselves from people that just aren't necessarily cut out for this.
What do you think about his predictions of doom and gloom? I know that's kind of Ken's, his shtick a little bit. That and I do understand what he's saying about how this is going to be all over one day. What do you think? Is he onto something, or is he being too pessimistic?
I think he's being a little bit pessimistic, but at the same time, he exists in a different space than we do. For example, to make it about us and bring it back to us. I think his model of making, maybe he's not going to be able to bring someone into his studio and make a $9,000 profit for 2 hours of work. For the business model that, vendors like us have, I think there's always going to sort of be opportunity, but there's not going to be, you're not going to see Kevin Owens in the future giving a price or an opportunity like Sid did that you could be profitable like that. The Sids, the Jimmy Harts, people of that era are, getting older, slowing down, dying, raising their prices, whatever. Like the opportunity to have, his type of success is maybe fleeting, but I think general success like the rest of us has, it's still reachable.
That Sid story was a hoot. It was coming at the very end. I didn't see it coming. To me, it was really, really interesting.
It was.
And it really shows you how the price of the guest dictates so much. There's so many pieces that fall into place when the guest gives you a price that you can work with. That was really interesting. Any other thoughts about the Ken's appearance? I'm honestly I can't believe we got over 2 hours out of him, and then he has a lot more stories, a lot more interesting things to say. We didn't even really get through maybe 2/3 of our question list.
No,
there's just a lot for Ken, and I've thought of a lot more questions for Ken.
We barely scratched the surface, and honestly, if you if you told me that Ken was going to come back on in a half hour, I'd be ready to go for another 2 hours. Like, there's so much to get to. I know how much, how many great stories and different, philosophies we can get into. I'm excited.
It's really interesting that he characterized his first time, the original time on the marked out board, as this time when the vendors and the promoters and the fans were kind of talking past each other. It was interesting. I kind of understand what he's talking about, but I also think that at the end of the day, we did all learn a lot about what the others were doing. We just, as he admitted this, that the promoters were fully embracing of many of the lies that were being told, and so what we were doing was holding them accountable, basically, for a lot of the BS that they were slinging. And so it was really interesting and really instructive, and I'm beyond grateful for that. It's really interesting to me.
Yes,
and especially that, like, and he hit us with that philosophical question at the end that I was not prepared for. But it is interesting, why, and it is an interesting question because one of the things that we talk about all the time, you and I, is that we don't want to be those people who are just losing money at this and doing it as like this weird jobby where they're losing money and they're never really in it for the business sense. That was never my goal here. I really don't get that much juice personally from sitting at a table with someone.
Yeah, I know I got more of a kick out of that afternoon with Hack than you did. You were, I think, kind of over Hack by the end of that whole thing. But
I was the one walking him around trying to. I had to bring him up to Rhea Ripley to try and angle them to give him a free op with Rhea Ripley, which was a whole fiasco.
I still don't even know how that photo went viral. Like, I guess Hack was texting that out because all of a sudden,
he texted it to his. I think he texted it to his kids who put it on social media. I think.
Yeah, I guess that's what happened. But I mean, yeah. As Hack is a joy. We saw Hack at WrestleCon, and shockingly, he remembered us and he came over and said hello. I have nothing but nice things to say about Hack, but I wouldn't spend $1,000 to just sit with Hack. Like, there has to be some sort of a game plan to profit, and that's the thing. And I think we've all, you and I, we've had discussions where I think we'll usually preface like a business proposal with saying, like, as a fan, this would be really cool, but there's always a but, and we kind of like steer away from things. We've had opportunities to book people that the deal doesn't make sense. It'd be freaking awesome just as like a fan, but I mean, you're not going to do that because you don't want to lose money. It's not that cool.
Yeah, and I think Ken is just really laser focused on his business. He knows his business and his customers really well, and that's really interesting to me because fundamentally, I think that it doesn't matter what he was selling. I really believe that he has just a natural mind for how to develop new business, and the way he described his book club and his virtual business, like, he has a good mind for business. I'm curious, if the wrestling vending and if the wrestling promoting and the autograph stuff, if it does dry up for him, then what comes after that? That's interesting to me.
Yeah, I feel like no matter what he does, if he puts that same level of just like passion and ingenuity into it, he's going to be successful anywhere.
So that's I agree, a lot of ingenuity there. And that's the word for Ken. Ken reinvented himself multiple times. It's also, I didn't even realize he ran that con in 2005 either. It's funny how you sort of don't realize what came about before your time,
Yeah.
And in 2005 we didn't have any of that. So
it's also just funny to, like, when you just said how Ken reinvented himself multiple times, it kind of makes you just think, and I really never connected the dots like this before, but like a vendor in the pro wrestling industry, it's so parallel to successful professional wrestlers themselves in the industry. The successful professional wrestler is able to reinvent themselves, land on their feet, innovate. And you look at Ken, who is, above almost any vendor you can think of, did the same thing. If you have one gimmick, if you have one perspective you could come from, or in some vendors' cases or talents' cases, there's no perspective. You're just sort of out there flailing around, hoping something sticks. You're not going to be successful. He was like a Mick Foley type of person that was able to continually evolve and grow.
So I think that wraps it up for Ken. Really, really, really thrilled with that interview. So we'll wrap up this episode, and then we'll get back to our regularly scheduled conversations next week. So if you are shopping for autographs, check out www.markedoutcollectibles.com. Check out our eBay store at mark-out-collectibles or our sister eBay store at ny-collectibles. Please contact us for any reason at markedoutcollectibles@gmail.com. Keep leaving your comments on YouTube, on YouTube, or we have, leave us some reviews on Spotify or on Apple Podcast. We started receiving some emails from fans at mark.collectibles@gmail.com. We're going to start reading those on the air next time, and hopefully, hear about your experiences. So if you heard anything that Ken said that you thought was interesting, if you remember being at some of his shows and meeting some of these guests, if you maybe walked past that lady at the Icon show who didn't get any sales, and have some recollection about that, give us a holler, and we will happily discuss it. So we have the one signing we're going to talk about right now. We have Paul Heyman, WWE Hall of Famer, ECW co-founder. All items and orders are due by November 7th. So that pretty much is it. So we will see you next time. So for Marked Out Radio, Marked Out Collectibles, and markedout.com, I'm Sean.
And I'm Dana.
And thanks for giving us a listen.